All right, everybody. With us this week, we're joined by Colleen Eyges of Velo Vodka. There we go. Third time's a charm. That's all right. But Boston brand, Massachusetts brand, woman-owned, family-owned. We've met over various events in the New England area, but we're so excited to talk about your business, the brand itself, and the stories that have come with it—the good, the bad, the ugly. But Colleen, welcome to the show, and how's everything going?
Great, and thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here today.
So let's kick things off. You're a New Englander, Massachusetts. The hard hitting journalism question at the beginning: who is Colleen? And, before the alcohol industry, what did Colleen want to do when she was growing up?
Sure. So I grew up in Weymouth, Massachusetts. So I'm from the South Shore. Um, I don't remember what I wanted to do as a kid. I definitely wanted to do something entrepreneurial. I actually sold Avon when I was 11 years old, door to door, which is kind of funny. And I grew up kind of with a mother who was very tight with the money. So if I wanted something cool or nice or something, I had to figure out how to get it myself. So I was always very kind of work oriented. I worked in the church rectory all through high school. And remember on my 16th birthday, I actually worked 3 jobs that day, 3 different jobs. I worked at Brigham's Ice Cream. I worked at the church, and then I worked in a printing house too, collating and just doing kind of some low key things. So I always had a really good work ethic instilled in me, but always thought too, I wanted to do something great and different and something, on my own as an entrepreneur. So the bug started really young.
So one thing led to another. I mean, 13 years in the banking and mortgage industry as well. So a lot of experience there. What were your biggest lessons learned from that industry? And was there ever a single moment that you attribute to saying, yes, this is the time that I decided to leave and go found Velo Vodka? Or yeah, just curious about your time there.
Sure. So actually spent about 20 years there. Got married, had kids, was in the travel business. I'd never traveled anywhere. So my first job out of college, I wanted to go work for a travel company so I could go see the world. And then ended up getting married, had 2 kids, and went into pharmaceutical sales because I really needed kind of a job that had health insurance and that was more stable, but was fascinated by the science, but it didn't pay very well and it was pretty demanding and highly structured. So ended up transitioning, getting divorced, and then going into the mortgage business. And that's kind of how I started into the mortgage business when my kids were really little. And it really gave me the flexibility to kind of, it was busy, it was busy during the school year, but it was not as busy during the summers and the holidays when the kids were off. So that worked out really well. But what I got to see in the banking industry was working with clients that were kind of high net worth. And then they were, they were interesting. A lot of them had their own businesses. A lot of them were highly successful, and getting to watch them years over years, sometimes acquiring real estate. And I remember one client, he had 4 properties when I started, and he had 11 properties several years later. So kind of getting to see, like, the work itself was kind of boring, but it paid well and it was flexible. However, the clients, I was smart enough to figure out the clients are interesting and look at the clients and what they're doing. And I had a lot of MIT relocation people too. So really smart, interesting people. So I feel like I learned a lot from, kind of having to work through tax returns that were complicated or had different sources of income, and getting to see what different clients were doing that was interesting. And, a lot of them were very successful, but you could kind of learn your lessons and kind of see from there, like, how these people went about doing it. I'll tell you one thing, they were very, what is the phrase I want to say? Not controlling, but controlled the situation. You know what I mean? They were very much on top of everything and detail oriented. And, that's, I feel like was a big thing about success, is kind of staying on top of every step, wanting to know everything, and really kind of being very thorough about their work and what they did. And I really think that's what made them so successful.
And during that time, did you ever have any, work with alcohol or, some type of beverage company to at least get a taste of this future industry? Or is this an endeavor, and we'll get to the story of when the brand was created, that you're jumping in completely blind?
Totally jumped in completely blind. Not a big drinker, wasn't a big drinker. Was kind of fascinated by the industry, was always kind of more of a tequila girl. I maybe bought like 2 jugs or 2 7 liters of tequila a year, and that's what I drink. So didn't really have any background in the liquor industry at all. But just felt
and I mean, how did you, that being the case, we'll get there, but how'd you ramp yourself up? Like, how did you sort of de-risk jumping in, totally blind to this industry?
Worked 2 jobs for 2 years.
That's a good one. That is.
I actually had, which you guys might find interesting, I had another project I started because, again, I had always wanted to do something entrepreneurial. And I also have kind of this ability, I feel like, to see things that other people don't necessarily see all the time, that are things that can be glaringly obvious to me, might not be, other people don't get. So about probably 12 years now, I developed a wrap that froze your fat off at home. And there's a product out there called Cool Sculpting that's sold for a couple billion to Allergen here in Boston. But, I went to an appointment. I couldn't afford it. Single mom, 2 kids, maybe could have spent $500, but it was like $1,200. So it was out of my reach. And I'm like, this is a cold-based product that basically compromises the cholesterol in the fat cell, freezes, sheds off. So I went home and just figured it out and tried it on myself and was able to lose like in 3/4 of an inch on one thigh in a month. And I was like, oh my God, this works. What woman isn't going to want to know about this? So went to market with that. We sold about $750,000 worth of the product. We could never figure out the equation between customer acquisition and cost of product. So that was very frustrating. And then the Velo idea came along and I was like, okay, I'm not having success with this product after several years. I'm going to go give this a whirl. And at that point I was dyingly burnt out of banking. Like I just like, oh my God, shoot me. And it's so funny. I just did a car loan for my son recently. And I was like, I was going to kill someone by the end of the week. He was like, this is so aggravating. I'm like, no wonder all my clients like wanted to kill me. And it wasn't really me personally. It's like, we all want to, like by the time you're done with a mortgage loan or bank loan, it's just an unpleasant, frustrating process.
Definitely polar opposite business paths in the banking and the alcohol industry.
Yeah, alcohol's fun. You're everybody's new best friend.
Exactly. So let's hear, the story you've shared, many a times, but it's a story that's worth sharing. The first encounter with the waitress that was unwell that sparked this idea of a vodka.
Sure. So my son had some health problems a few years before we went to brunch. He spent 6 weeks in children, 4 in ICU. So I was always very worried about his health, what made him sick. We never really figured out. So very kind of hovering over him. And we go to Bootleg Special in Boston, and the bathroom, the waitress comes out of the bathroom tying her apron. I'm like, oh my God, what's she doing? I hope she washed her hands. Total mom, banker. And the whole meal, she's MIA. So I'm like, oh my God, this girl's got the flu. She's going to touch his plate. She's going to get him sick. I'm back in ICU, down this rabbit hole of a mom in my head. But at the end of the meal, she rolls in with this huge jug of Pedialyte in one arm and ginger ale in the other. And I'm like, yeah. The kid's like, you're weirdo. What's your problem? I'm like, she's hungover. And they're like, you're even weirder. Why do you care? And I'm like, she's not going to get your brother sick. And I'm so aggravated. I'm like, why aren't they putting the damn stuff in the vodka? Like, why wasn't this girl thinking better last night? Or certainly drinking better or clearly drinking less than she had, because she was just a train wreck. And at that point, I'm like, well, why aren't we all just drinking better, smarter? Why aren't we drinking higher quality liquid that tastes better, so we're not banging it all down and getting ourselves so sick? So really, that's where the inspiration came from.
So from there, right, that's something that we've all related to, right? We've all been walking around with the Pedialyte and the ginger ale or something like that, and wishing like, wow, why did I drink all that Burnett's or, Smirnoff or whatever? But so you have this idea, you realize, wow, we can create something that is at least, better for you. Maybe it doesn't have a burn or a bite or something like that, right? So what are the next steps after that for you to actually commercialize this? How did you get to work and turn this idea to a reality?
Sure. So we wanted to come up with something smoother. Unfortunately, alcohol will never be better for you. So just kind of a smoother, higher quality vodka. So the first step really was to find a distiller. And that's, I feel like, one of my skill sets from like banking. It was just pick up the phone and start calling people, like Google it, find somebody who can do this, call, talk to probably 4 or 5 different places, saying, look, I'm looking to make a vodka. And, I want something that's a little different in terms of formulation, smoother. I'm looking for a very specific high quality product. And that's kind of where the journey started. And I actually found a guy right here in Boston, which worked out great. And we went through about 17 iterations of trying, does this work? We wanted corn based, so it was gluten free. Does this work? Okay, we like these 3. Let's narrow it down, and let's go. And we went through several rounds trying to get where we were like, this is a really good quality, smooth vodka. Like it almost tastes like nothing, as vodka should, because you guys probably know, and most people know, there's a lot of bad vodka out there. Like a lot of ooh. And you know what, to be honest, I won't drink it. If it tastes like crap, I'd rather drink water. Like there's just no point of putting something in your body that is, tastes that bad in my book.
And when you found the distiller, was it something that, being in Boston was part of the business plan, or was that just the stars aligned that, you found somebody that could create or how the vision that you had to create this product, and then after obviously the iterations, have the brand that we have today?
The Boston certainly helped, and I was so glad. It's kind of funny. Somebody said one time, the distiller said, why did you choose me? And I'm like, you're the only one who called me back. So somebody was like, shush, he's going to charge you more for telling him that. And I'm like, well, I like the truth. It is what it is. I'm pretty transparent. So that was kind of part of it. But I'll tell you, it made life so much easier because there is a lot of going back and forth to the distillery. And there was somebody else I was talking to in Brooklyn who might have been a potential. And, they just didn't get back to me. So it worked out well that I can run in there anytime I want. Sometimes I'm delivering boxes or caps or labels or, who knows why I have to go back and forth. I mean, we've all, myself, my daughter, and my son have all stood in the distillery and filled bottles, stacked bottles. I've tried to label bottles. I'm really bad at it. So then I go to the stacking bottles. But I've literally stacked an entire 112 case pallet myself. So it's great to be so close, because if you need to do anything, if I ever had to go to like Kansas or New York or whatever, it would be much more difficult than something I could run in there at 10 o'clock at night and get something fixed or done or et cetera. So, and we've been really lucky. Our distiller's been amazing. And, the other piece of it is like, nobody wants to take you because most people have no follow through whatsoever. So he'll tease me. He's like, you have fire in your belly. I've brought other people in along the way who might have wanted to do a project. He's like, yeah, they're not going to do crap. I'm like, how do you know that? And he's like, I can just tell because most people don't. Unfortunately, that's one of the things in this project is, I hate to say this, but like maybe 97% of people, most of them don't follow through. But it benefits those of us who do. So I'm like a bit of a pit bull with a to-do list. I get stuff done. Majority of the time, I'm just very much like, I have my list right next to me, and I'm like, every day I'm like, bing, bang, boom. I love crossing stuff off the list. So, it's been interesting, and we've been super lucky to have him, and he did create an absolutely fabulous product. So kudos to him.
So you mentioned there's, you said the word, there's a lot of bad vodka out there, right? There's a lot of bad spirits out there. So, I mean, in your eyes, what are the issues with sort of vodka and spirit brands right now, right? Is it just not good? Do they not make it a certain way? And I guess ultimately the question is, where do the current brands that are out there, without obviously naming specifics, but where do the current brands drop the ball in your eyes?
I don't know if I can necessarily answer that because I don't come from the industry. I just think there's, different levels of quality, and some of them, there's bites, there's burn, there's bottom shelf. I mean, it is alcohol. We forget that. Like, we think of it like, oh, it's a spirit, but it literally is alcohol. So, it's kind of, it would be hard for me to stay. I'm not like a distiller who has great knowledge in distilling. You know, I feel like I have a really good distiller. I feel for us, we start with a really high grade corn and we only distill 3 times. So people are like, well, it should be distilled 10 times. I'm like, well, if it has to be distilled 10 times, it's pretty crappy to start with, in my opinion. You know, if they constantly have to keep putting it through to filter out, then it, you know what I mean? Why do you have to filter out so much stuff? Why don't you just start with really good quality ingredients? It's kind of like, you know, you go to Avon Louis and you eat a steak, like this, the price they're buying that steak for that you're eating is probably a lot higher than the price of, you know what I mean? A Red Roaster or whatever, you know, other kind of bigger chain that might be mass, like our Chick-fil-A is buying their piece of chicken for. So I feel like it could be an ingredients thing. It could be a mass production thing, you know? So again, I can just only really speak for ourselves.
And from the business standpoint, I mean, you began this business 1 month before the pandemic. Is that something that was a blessing in disguise, or was there obstacles ahead that completely, you know, made you question, okay, is this the journey I want to take?
Yeah, it was really like, are you kidding me? This cannot be happening. Like, do I have like the worst luck for somebody ever? So I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my God, this is not good. Because there were 2 pieces to it. One is like, nobody knows your brand. So why do they want to try it? And 2, all the restaurants were shutting down. So you can't even I got into one restaurant in Cambridge right before it closed. Like I remember sitting there, it was like March 16th or maybe it was March 18th. And I'm having a drink with the bartender. I'm the only one in there. And I'm like, we're screwed. Like we're screwed. Like this is really not good timing. But what ended up being neat about it is once I was worried about going out because I'm worried about my son. So I didn't want to bring something home and get him sick when the beginning of COVID, when people were super scared. So I was like, oh, I'm just going to sit here and I don't do nothing. Basically, I was doing mortgages and those were booming. So that was good because we were still making a ton of money. But when things kind of started to lighten up, there were a couple of places that would let you do dry tasting. So I would literally go to the liquor store and pull out the bottles and stand there at the table, but I couldn't serve it. But I'd just tell people about it. And I could still sell a ton of it. People were wonderfully supportive about local. Like people were like, yeah, we want to support local. And they were wonderful about supporting women down. So I had one at Cappy's in Norwell here, not too far from where I live. And I sold 5 cases in a couple hours and we're in 6-packs. So that was like 30 bottles. And they're like, nobody tried it. You still stole 30 bottles. So it was pretty cool. We could, you know, the owner of the chain was like, how does she do this? But a lot of it's like enthusiasm and people are just amazingly willing and supportive to help local businesses, and women love supporting women-owned businesses. There's just some stat I read that women would rather drink a product made by a woman or buy a product made by a woman than not. It was a big percentage. So, you know, thank you to just people. Every time I go out and do a tasting, which I do probably every weekend, at least once, you know, people never cease to kind of be wonderful and supportive. And every time I'm like, oh, wow, people are just so good to us and so wonderful and kind. So, you know, that's where we're really, really lucky.
So another awesome experience that you get to have is you get to do this with your daughter as well. So Riley, your daughter is your partner in crime. Was it ever a goal of yours to sort of have a business that stayed in the family, or was it just sort of a product of circumstance? Or tell us a little bit about, you know, how special that is to get to do that with your daughter.
Well, we're super lucky. It's very fun. You know, sometimes we want to kill each other. She probably wants to kill me more than I want to kill her. So it's a real charm. I think so many mother and daughters or father and sons or, you know, just across the board would love to work together. And it works really well. Like she's another one who always kind of impresses me by just like getting stuff done. You know, she's like, my job is to make your life easier because my life is pretty busy. So super lucky there. We really hadn't planned on it, but you know, your age, her age is really our target market. What excited me so much about the project when I started doing the research is like the Gen Zers and just about that are looking for a new product. They're looking for new spirits. They want to discover their own brands. They don't want to drink their parents or their grandparents' brands. So that to me was so exciting. Like, I think the market is ripe for disruption. I mean, what has been exciting in vodka in the last 20 years? Maybe botanicals. That's about all I can think of. So I feel like, she really was the plug into the target market. She's the one who's kind of very social, goes out to the clubs. Everybody seems to love her. She's got a lot of friends, a lot of people in the industry she's friends with. So, that's really where we get a lot of our kind of market feedback, et cetera. So, she's more of it than I am. I can kind of run behind the scenes and do the business piece and work really hard, but it's your age group that really what we're looking at, that's looking for something new and exciting and in engaging with Velo, which is awesome. So, but it's definitely fun. I'll tell you just a funny story. I sent her off to get a picture, we wanted to cut out of her holding 2 bottles of Velo to the liquor store. So I send her off to the photographer and I think, oh, we're fine. And she's cute. So the picture comes back and she looks great. And I look down and she's not wearing any shoes. And I'm like, why aren't you wearing these shoes? And I'm like, not only that, you have mismatched socks on. I'm like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? I'm like, I'm going to kill you. She's like, well, that's where the bottom piece is going with the Velo on it. I'm like, well, I wasn't planning on it, but now it is, There's plenty of good things where, she's doing stuff where, and I'm sure she wants to strangle me way more. Like, I posted something yesterday. She's like, off the Instagram, you cannot. I'm like, but that's cool and it's inspirational. And she's like, it doesn't apply. Stop it. Don't touch the Instagram. Stop following people. Stop doing this. So I'm probably more in trouble with her than she is with me when we do these things. Sometimes people are like, you should get cut out of you two strangling each other. So.
Yeah, I mean that might be fitting. As we talk about the growth in future, I think one thing that really helped elevate the business was getting picked up by Martignetti back in last year. We have a good friend, shout out Eddie DeVito, who works at Martignetti. But since partnering with them, since partnering with such a massive distributor, like, how have you supplied that demand and how have you, ramped up your efforts because, you're getting your product to more shelves and eyes across Massachusetts?
Yeah. So that was like a total game changer for us. It was one of it was probably the biggest win we had as a brand, was to get picked up by Martignetti, because they're everywhere and they're just so respected and they're #1 in New England. I know they were #6 in the US, but they just required a distributorship in Connecticut. So they might be #5 or 4 now. And total game changer. Like, I literally remember getting the phone call. I was sitting at Southie Girl in Back Bay, and I got the phone call and I was like, oh my God, this is awesome. This is like one of the best days ever. So trying to keep up with the demand, it's been, I don't find that piece challenging. That's just kind of ops oriented. So in vodka, you can make quickly. It's not like it has to age for 3 months, etc. So, just kind of staying on top of making sure you have enough bottles, glass and labels and boxes and all that good stuff. And the distributor's been really easy to, our distiller rather, has been easy to work with. So, but it has, we jumped from like 64 accounts when we started with them to probably over 650. So we're in New Hampshire, Rhode Island, Mass, and Connecticut will be probably by the end of the year. So, the growth has happened really quickly. It's more been this 2-year window. We just started with them August 21. So even though we had those 2 years of COVID, I feel like they don't even count at this point. It's really been this really fast-paced growth, but their reps are amazing. They follow through. We get placements. The restaurants are always excited, or the liquor stores, they all use them. So there's no kind of like, yeah, let's take in one SKU just to put in this one vodka from some random distributor. So yeah, it's been a great experience. And, the growth is, that part of the business is easy, I think, to manage for us. It's just the hardest part I struggle with now is we've grown so fast and we have so many accounts so fast, trying to get to all the accounts to make sure you're kind of activating them right, or you're servicing them right, or you're getting enough tastings in and make sure the product's moving.
So I know Will discovered you at one of the Martini events down in Rhode Island. Universally a great event, by the way. I heard lots of great things that happened there. And, for those that don't know, essentially it was a Martini competition and Velo was the base of this, right? So a little bit about that event, what did that bring for you guys, and you know, how great has it been to sort of see the reception on the front lines in the markets that you sell into?
Oh, that was a phenomenal event. Our sales rep in Rhode Island put it together with some other people. We were so excited to be the only vodka sponsored. It gave us kind of great exposure on both sides, to the restaurants who got to try Velo and work with it for the first time. Some of them the first time, other ones had already used it. But to see how incredibly smooth and how, you know, it just disappears when you put it in a cocktail. But also to the 350 people that came in from the public to get to try it. So for us, that was it was a huge win. And, you know, I feel like it was kind of a great rollout into Rhode Island as a brand for, you know, everybody, to both the restaurants and the consumer, to get to see it. We did the Boston Wine Show. I think it was, I can't remember when it was, what month it was, but for us, that was kind of a game changer too, the exposure to kind of the 2,000 people, you know, and people getting to come up and try it. And the feedback is always like, occasionally you'll get someone who's like, oh, this isn't for me. And everybody palate's different. But like the feedback from consumers is, I've got to start videotaping it, because it's always so great. You know, people are like, oh my God, this is so good. And Will, you've had it, right?
Absolutely. I mean, the first time I actually had it was at the women's event in the Crown Plaza.
Yeah.
And I was trying to be like, all right, what's the catch? Because it was so smooth. It tasted great. I was like, are you sure this is actually vodka? Like, I don't know, like, but I was truly impressed. And then seeing all the people make the different martinis, and the different restaurants, you know, take your brand and turn it into, you know, you had like a cookies and cream, you had like a, you know, fruit punch type. Like, there were so many different varieties that I was like, this is truly a great product. And I can't wait to see the next 5 years of
Yeah, we were super lucky, and it's so versatile. It goes with everything, and once you put it in a cocktail, it really disappears. And you know, what's funny is, as I mentioned, I'm not like a huge drinker, but a couple times recently, I've ordered a dirty martini, or really not too dirty martini. And the last time I had one, it was like last week at a place called Trident down here in Hingham, Mass. And I was like, I keep sipping it. I'm like, I can't believe this is my vodka. It's so smooth. You know what I mean? Like, it like literally doesn't taste like anything. Like, it tastes so smooth and clean, and you're not getting that bite burn. Because if it was like burning, I'd be like, oh, why do I want to? You know, remember well, you guys are probably too young, but when we were kids, cough medicine tasted terrible.
So kind of, yeah. I mean, you know,
we were on the tail end of like cough medicine. Yeah.
Your parents would be like shoving it at you. You'd be like, yeah, like horrific. I want to throw it right. People would throw her back up. It was so bad. You know,
it was still not pleasant for us, for sure. We were old enough to appreciate that, at least.
Yeah.
Well, gummy. Yum. I've had girlfriends eat the entire thing of like the vitamin gummies and get sick. Like,
oh man.
Crazy. I mean, yeah, I definitely have seen that. I mean, the vitamin C gummies, I can rip instantly. But has there been a pinch me moment for you in this business endeavor where it's like, either we've made it, or, you know, something as simple, it's like, I'm drinking that martini and I can't believe it. This is my brand.
Yeah, I think one of them definitely was getting into Martinetti. That was kind of like a blessing from the Pope. You know what I mean? Like, excuse the expression, but you know what I mean? Like, it was like, okay, they think we're real enough for us to take us. And they haven't taken a vodka we're just a single SKU. So we just make the one size right now, the one thing. And they haven't taken a single SKU vodka since 2008. And the last vodka they took was Tito's. So I was like, oh my God, this is a big deal. This is great validation. So that was, and then it's kind of funny. I grew up, when I was 16, our neighbor across the street was a valet kid at the Four Seasons Hotel. So I started going there really young, and I loved it. It was like so luxurious and amazing and like beautiful. And I'd spent a couple birthdays through the years. Like, it was always like kind of the nicest go-to place in Boston for me. I teased. I'm like, if I was going to die, I'd want to sit in the sofa and have a drink and die in the sofa. And we got in there, and we got on the bar, and we got on their menu. And I remember the first time, usually I'm very much like, what's next? More. We got to do better, stronger, faster. You know, I'm not like, oh yeah, we're doing great, I'm going to sit here and be excited about it. Just there's just so much more work to do. But I remember walking into the Four Seasons and seeing the bottle in the bar. And I'm like, wow, I'm going to enjoy this moment. This is super cool.
It's incredible. Is a tap room ever in the cards for you guys? Like, is that going to be the goal, or if not, maybe what do you envision the next 5 years looking like for Velo?
And sorry, I didn't catch a tap room. Did you say?
Yeah, would there ever be a room where you have like a tap room or tasting room or something like that?
Probably not. Owning a distillery is a whole nother ball game.
Yeah.
Of compliance and regulation and management and all that stuff. If anybody wants to go see a cool tap room, the Boston Harbor Distillery, a girlfriend of mine owns that. Super cool. She kind of does both. She makes spirits and she has the location that's just absolutely beautiful. So that's fantastic. But I really just envision expansion for us. It will be just kind of continue to expand, state to state. We're adding Connecticut. We might do Florida. Q1, kind of more focused on the East Coast, concentrated, and really kind of go from there, but kind of just build the brand up really well in the markets we're in and strong. I feel like a lot of brands try to go like national, and it's very expensive, and it's very, I have another friend that owns a brand, and he's like, I won't talk to you anymore if you start going all over the country, because then you run around all over the country. And like, you got to go to Las Vegas, and you got to go to California. Like, worst case, I have to go to Rhode Island or New Hampshire or Connecticut or Florida. I can manage all that, but trying to be in, a whole bunch of different states. So really kind of good, steady, strong growth in the markets we're in, and improve ourselves well there.
So you mentioned, you mentioned Boston Harbor Distillery as a place, sort of an exemplary place now. But what's a place that you would love to see Velo Vodka at? Maybe it's in Boston, maybe it's somewhere else. But where's sort of that dream location for you?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I mean, I think when you get to Las Vegas, that's a big deal. Do you know what I mean? When you get to Las Vegas, I think now in Boston, for us, like the Marielle group would be like Cavo. It would be great. There's just so many great spots here that we're kind of excited. We just got on the bar Coquette, so that was really exciting. So there's definitely a bunch of restaurant groups here in Boston we're really would be a next step we're looking to get into, but I hadn't really thought about that. I mean, I think it would be pretty cool to go to like Dubai and see your bottle on the bar. That would be, or London or wherever, like as you move out of the country, but I kind of don't let myself get that far ahead.
One day at a time. I'm
excited to be at Cavo or Marielle or some of these wonderful, plenty of Boston hotspots. We are in the View, which was a big win recently too. I don't know if you guys have been up there, but oh my gosh, is it spectacular! If you haven't, go check it out. It's mind blowing. I knew it would be impressive, and I got up there. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is spectacular.
Is that at the Prue?
Yeah, it's the old top of the hub. They did a beautiful job. It's 3 different floors. It's super kind of clean, elegant, and it is like the view is spectacular. It's a great spot. Hopefully, we'll have a party there at some point.
I think those were the two most unique, because we ask a lot of beer brands and vodka brands too, sort of what's the dream location for you? We've heard a lot of New York. We've heard a lot of, different hotspots, but I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Will, that's the first time we've heard Vegas. So that's really cool. And I'm actually shocked that it took that long to hear Vegas out of the many years we've been doing this.
I know, but I mean, one day, right? You got to keep the motivation on the bulletin board in the background. And, I hope in a couple of years, or at your rate, might be a couple months. I
mean, I don't know. I feel like as Velo, like I think of us as a brand as like we're fun. You know what I mean? And I think it's kind of like smart, sexy, fun. That's kind of what we're looking for, like about kind of people enjoying themselves, out having a good time. Very post-COVID, people are happy to party again, and not in an excess by any means, but just kind of like go out. There's nothing I love more personally than sitting at a bar. I love sitting at the bar and having a really delicious, good cocktail and having a fabulous conversation with somebody that I find interesting, or, the conversation, just kind of like having a really cool, interesting conversation with maybe something I don't know a lot about. But to me, that's kind of like the luxury in life, is like a really good cocktail at a really nice place and a great conversation. Like, what life's all about.
And was there anybody, in the industry, whether it was, women in the alcohol industry or a brand that you really resonate to, that, either answered questions that you might have had, someone that you, just looked up to in the industry, or provided you advice?
Oh, I think people have been amazingly supportive with advice. Like, it's shocked me how kind of people in the mortgage industry, you're competing against everybody. So you don't, like, I used to have this mentality that I didn't want to socialize with my competitors. Like, why would I bother? So I wouldn't engage in any of that stuff. Oh my God, the liquor business is so much different. Like, everybody's like, what can I do to help you? Do you need some advice? Like, I remember one of the reps of one of the big vodka brands took Riley and I out for drinks and was like, you should focus on cocktails, the basic cocktails, the Cosmos, the Bloody Marys, the Mules. Those are going to be tried and true. And oh my gosh, so many people have been so kind and generous with their advice. It's blown me away, that how helpful they've been. It's not like everybody's trying to uplift everybody in this industry. It's not like, oh, well, I'm not going to talk to you because you have this on the bar or you're with this distributor. Like, and you know what? We need all the advice we can get. We don't come from the business. Do you know what I mean? So there's stuff that I just don't know. In some ways that might serve me well because maybe the ignorance is bliss. And if I had known all this stuff, I wouldn't be, if you told me I had to work every weekend for the next 5 years, I'd probably be like, yeah, probably. Now I'm in it and I'm stuck in it and I'm happy to be in it. So I'm going to do it. But, I think, like there's so much we have to learn. I feel like this, you never know who can say something to you, like one little thing that could take a turn in a positive way and could traject you into an excellent position. So yeah, people have been mind blowing me, whether it's the restaurant people being helpful or my people at other brands being helpful. It's a great thing.
So you're talking about getting a lot of advice, but you also are in a position where you can give it too, right? Because you've done this, you've made a leap into an industry that you had zero experience in. So, I mean, what advice would you say to someone that was in your shoes, right? They had a bunch of corporate experience. They made a leap into a brand that they were passionate about, but had no direct experience in. What would you say to somebody like that?
Well, I had a funny experience like a week or two ago with this woman who was a doctor and she wanted to create a brand of like her and her girlfriend like to go to the beach and like to have like these lemon vodka soda things. And she's like, well, what about this? And whatnot. I'm like, no, which is really funny because usually I don't do that with people, or I try not to do that with people. And she's like, yeah, how do you create it? How do you get a distributor? And I'm like, if you're going to get into this business, you better be ready to, you got to go big or go home because you can't play small. It's just too much, you know what I mean? There's too much involved. There's too much expense involved. It costs a lot of money to do these things. So, I mean, if to get into the business, like you got to go all in or I wouldn't be bothered, to dabble in something part-time is just not the way to do it. Like you really have to go 110% in here, I think, or don't get in. And I think it needs to be something that you're like super, like you really, really have to be passionate about it and committed to it. It's almost like a borderline obsession for us. Like it has to be because, people are like, oh, well, I might want to do a seltzer or I might want to, I'm like, there's a million seltzers out there. Do we really need another seltzer in the market? And unless you can come up with something that's mind-blowingly original, good luck trying to compete because it's very expensive. It's very time intensive, etc. So it was funny. This doctor was like a pediatric neurologist. And then we started talking about like Pedialyte and bubbles. And she's like, well, I was thinking of creating something for kids that, I'm like, that would make perfect sense for you. I'm like, that's a brilliant idea because you're the expert in the field. You work with children every day. You're into gastro. So you know how it affects, like, that's a great area of your expertise. But I think a lot of people like a cocktail and think, oh, this would be a great idea. I should go do it. It's a massive commitment. It's way more of a commitment than working for companies, say doing mortgages or banking. So, but happy to give people advice and try to be really positive about it overall. But it's funny, I met with somebody way up at one of the top, say 3 companies who's out of Boston in the beginning. He's like, please don't start a vodka company. Don't start a vodka company. He's like, really, it's a really bad idea. And I'm like, I already started it. So come in, we're going.
Too late for that. Yep.
It's way too late for that. And, and you look at some of the advice he gave me that day and he was right. You know what I mean? Like, but like, you're already kind of in the water. You got to keep going. So, and it's fun and we're doing extremely well. So like, if we weren't doing well, this would be a whole nother ballgame, but every month, like we're up well over 100% this year already. So if we weren't doing well, it would be like, oh boy, this is something we really got to think about, sink or swim here. But like it's going well. And again, I feel like the opportunity is absolutely there for the younger generation of drinkers to find, something new. I kind of tease like people, I'm 54 and they used to have RCA TVs and Electrolux vacuums and all that stuff. And I'm like, remember when they had that stuff? Like it's long gone. Some of the, it's time for something new and exciting in the liquor business. And, these new brands coming in, some of them will stick for the long run and they'll be the 20-year-old brands eventually. So hopefully we'll be one of those.
Fingers crossed. And we're excited to follow along the journey. But Colleen, we appreciate the time. Where can our listeners find you on social media, find out more about Velo, find the products? I know we mentioned some of the states, but the floor is yours to plug away.
Oh, thank you so much. So on social media, we're at Velo Vodka on Instagram and Facebook. TikTok, we're not quite up at running that much yet. In terms of liquor stores, we're in all the Total Wines, the Cappies, the Luke's. We do at Velo Vodka is our website too. We have a map on there, so you can find us there. But we're in over 600 locations, and primarily in Mass and expanding into Rhode Island. And we just, if you're interested in Velo, you can ask your liquor store. Just ask them, do you have Velo? Can you bring in Velo? They usually will bring in a spirit. We're in 6-pack cases. It's easy. So most liquor stores do accommodate that. And, if you have favorite bartenders or places you like to drink, and you can just be like, when are you getting Velo?
I love it. It's a foolproof strategy. And shout out Cappies. I'm looking at one over here. Right off Route 1 in Saugus Revere, wherever that is.
Yeah. No, they were wonderful to us. They took us very early on. The owner's great. And, as a new brand, I was like shocked they took us, because sometimes you have to fight really hard to get into these places. I mean, there's places that we're a pretty good brand now, and like we're struggling. We want to get to Whole Foods, and, it's like this endless process. And other places are like, no, we don't need another vodka. So, the Cappies very early on was very progressive and incredibly supportive of us. So I'd say overall, like the experience with people have been incredibly, wonderfully helpful. Like it's mind blowing how amazing they've been. Like, so that my overall experience is that consumers and kind of companies, like it's an amazingly wonderful experience, how wonderful people have been to us. We're so blessed.
That's great to hear that's the liquor scene in New England, and that's your perception. Colleen, we can't thank you enough, and we're going to be cheering for Velo, and hopefully all have the opportunity to taste it soon. I might have to go down to Cappies and get it right now. So
please do.
Thanks a bunch.
Awesome. So good to meet you guys. Thank you very much for your time.